I talked to a Mizzou source who told me that Drinkwitz has not broached that subject of leaving the University of Missouri with Missouri at this stage. And to quote the source, said, "We will do whatever it takes to keep Eli Drinkwitz, and we have whatever it takes to keep him." Now, if I'm Eli Drinkwitz and I can go 9-4, 10-3, and I can keep my job and be relatively comfortable and try to do better next year, I think I'd rather have that situation where you go 9-4 and 10-3 and get whacked. And then you're looking for a job again, and you probably aren't going to wind up with a job as good as the University of Missouri job. I get why Eli Drinkwitz would be connected with these other jobs. I could even understand if Drink would want to go to a place where national championships have been won before. Florida, I would not touch LSU now, but I could understand it. That being said, I think if you look long-term, if you play the long game, if you're Eli, do you have a better chance of staying long-term and building a great program at Missouri based on recent history? That's Gary Pinkel, Barry Odom, Drinkwitz. Or do you have a better chance of staying long-term and building a sustainable championship program at the University of Florida? I think the recent history tells us that you have a better chance, maybe not to win a national championship, but at least to stick around and build a program at Mizzou.
Yeah, and I think we've seen plenty of struggling from Florida coaches who, despite the fact they have the recruiting backyard and all those things, they can't turn it around because whatever the reasoning is. And listen, I'll say it, all things equal, I get why people say that Florida is a better job. But I can't get away from everything you're talking about, which is just the job security is completely different. The ability to actually have a long-term plan is completely different. It sets up completely different. It changes how everything you handle. And fine, yeah, the backyard's better, but as long as you can get kids in and pay them NIL money, then that's what matters.
There you go. That's the key. It doesn't matter where a kid grew up anymore. A kid from Sarasota, Florida, that is offered $50,000 a year by Florida and is offered $100,000 a year by Missouri, that kid's going to Missouri. Players are in it for the money now. And just go back, and I use this all the time, but I think it's appropriate to use. When Nick Saban talked to Congress a few years ago about NIL and the transfer portal, he said the reason that he left is because they had recruits over to his house, and Miss Cherry, his wife, came up and said, "What are we doing here?" He said, "What are you talking about?" And she said, "Well, it used to be that players wanted to come here to play football, become better men, win national championships, go to the NFL." He said, "Now all I'm hearing from these kids is how much money am I going to get?" That's where we are in college football. It's not about where do I have the best chance to win, although that's a big part of it. It's not about what gets me closest to home. It's about where do I get the most money? And I think that's really important for everybody to keep in mind here. It doesn't matter. The Mizzou, remember the kid Miles McVay, really good offensive lineman out of East St. Louis a few years ago? He didn't go to Mizzou because they couldn't pay him as much.
Yeah, that's a good point.
He went to Alabama because they paid him. And he's not the only one. Why do you think Ryan Wingo isn't at Mizzou, but he's at Texas? Because Mizzou wouldn't pay him as much. They didn't want to give him as much as Luther Burden was making at the time. They didn't want to make Wingo their highest paid receiver. That's why. It all really ultimately comes down to money.